So next speaker is Dr. Ikeda Lal, who is Senior Consultant at Delhi Eye Center and Assistant Consultant at Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi. And she's going to share her case with us. Dr. Ikeda?
Very good afternoon to you all. And thank you, huge thanks to Dr. Chitra and Dr. Harshul Tak for inviting me to this wonderful webinar. And I'm just going to share my case now. So today I'll be talking about a patient with posterior polar cataract with nuclear sclerosis in a patient who has high hypermetropia and pterygium. We can see the IOL power here is 35 diopters. The two important values to look at are the aqueous depth and the induced astigmatism. Now here, even though patient is a high hypermetrop, the aqueous depth is 3 millimeters, so it makes the surgery a little comfortable. And also the induced astigmatism is less than 1, and that's the reason why I did not go ahead with first a pterygium surgery, followed subsequently by cataract surgery. So here, when we are starting with our capsulorhexis, I'm just going from the side port and making a rhexis. The aim here is to get an adequate size 5 or 5.5 millimeter rhexis, which is not too large, just in case we need to put a lens in the sulcus and do optic capture. What I do in posterior polar cataract is I like to do a little bit of anterior viscodissection, just going underneath the anterior lens capsule and gently injecting viscoelastic. This avoids inadvertent hydrodissection when I'm carrying out my hydrodelineation and gives me the confidence to do a perfect hydrodelineation because of the resistance provided by the viscoelastic. Now, this patient also has a sufficient amount of nuclear sclerosis. So here my strategy is to first clear up this anterior cortex and the epinuclear plate, epinucleus, and then go ahead with the technique of stop and chop. So once I create my trench, I make sure that my vacuum settings are a little lower side for posterior polar than a regular cataract, and just making sure that we crack the nucleus gently without avoiding too much inadvertent pressure. And the important thing to remember here is to not rotate the nuclear fragments. So we are gently just trying to lift up these nuclear fragments into the anterior chamber and emulsifying at the iris plane to avoid the rotation, which again can cause a dehiscence in the posterior capsule. So I'm doing the same with the other segment as well. And again, important for us in these cases to make sure that we don't let the chamber collapse. So as soon as I remove my chopper, I'm going ahead to inject the viscoelastic from the side port to ensure that the nucleus, the chamber does not prolapse. Then I'm injecting viscoelastic under the epinucleus. This would do two things. A, it would inhibit me to remove the epinucleus without rotation and also seal any PC dehiscence if present. So taking care that we do minimal rotation as much as possible and aspirate this epinucleus. So once we remove the epinucleus and the posterior cortex, we can see that the posterior polar cataract has been removed. And then we are doing a bimanual irrigation aspiration. Again, it's important here to remember that we avoid polishing the posterior capsule. Even if there are a few fibers left, it's better to leave it because the PC might be very weak in these cases. Then I've enlarged my incision a bit here just to be on the safer side because I'm injecting a 36 diopter IOL and I don't want to cause an inadvertent rent at the time of injecting the lens here. And again injecting air before I come out. And this is the other eye of the same patient. Actually, I operated 2 weeks later. Again, I'm carrying out the technique of viscodissection, then followed by hydrodelineation. And this is a relatively softer nucleus here. So I've changed my technique a little bit. Here, I'm clearing out a little bit more of anterior epinucleus and cortex because I want to lift up this entire lens and emulsify it. So as soon as I start my trench, I'm able to hold the lens. A little bit of Frenching helps me divide it a little easier, avoiding the stress on the PC and the zonules, and then I can emulsify it with ease in the at the iris plane. And then the same principles of removing the epinuclear plate without rotation are followed. And in the left eye, we inject 35 diopter of intraocular lens. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Yeah, that was a perfect teaching video, I guess, that how one should, approach in the case of posterior polar cataract. And very nicely done, Dr. Ikeda.
Thank you.
So, if I can get Dr. Partha here. Partha, sir?
Yeah, sure, Harshul. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So Ekada, congratulations for that very nice video. And I think this is all the techniques that you have shown excellently demonstrated. And all of us do understand the importance of retaining the intact posterior capsule. Having said this, the challenge at times what we find is taking out a soft nucleus. The softer nucleus where you cannot actually divide it becomes a little difficult at times, and then more of maneuver goes in. Here again, the viscodissection that you demonstrated for removing the epinucleus comes into play also, and you can do a little bit of viscodissection as and when required to remove the soft nucleus. The other thing is at times, that pi of a, grade 2, grade 3 nucleus might not come. So at times you have to bend it at an angle, the phaco probe, the needle goes at an angle, and then you can get a pi. But the first pi getting out is very, very important. Really good. Everything that you showed is very nice.
Partha, I have a question for you. Supposing it's a high hypermetrope, would you plan to have a custom IOL in the bag, or would you place a high power in the bag and plan a piggy bag lens later? Because there could be some surprises in these cases.
Correct. So, a custom IOL in the bag as a first instance would be the best. In case there is a residue power, and if it is a small power, then patient might just go ahead with that power as a spectacle. But if it is a large surprise, then of course a piggyback later on can be planned. But a custom IOL, I think, should be the first choice, especially, and obviously a custom IOL with a PPC means that you should have something for the sulcus as well as something for the bag, meaning.
Namrata, I have a question for you. If it is a high with the rule and it also has a fleshy pterygium, would you do a pterygium and the cataract in the same sitting, or would you do it in 2 sittings?
So I think first of all, congratulations, Ekada, for an excellent demonstration, excellent conversation. The way you put it, all educational points came out. And Chitra, I think a very valid question. I would have asked Ekada myself that, I would go do a pterygium surgery first whenever you have a pterygium and cataract, and if it is causing significant amount of astigmatism, and then get the keratometry to stabilize, and then do phacoemulsification as a second stage surgery. So that would be my take on it. And second thing is that I just wanted to know which viscoelastic Ekada did you use for whenever you injected prior to hydro procedures? Which viscoelastic did you use? Was it visco?
This is just simple HPMC, ma'am. I just use a dispersive viscoelastic HPMC, did not use a viscoat. And to just highlight the point about pterygium, ma'am, as you very well pointed out, so this patient actually did not have a significant astigmatism. We also did a pentacam for him. And the astigmatism that we got in the right eye as well as the left was about 0.5 diopters. So that's the reason why we went ahead with cataract surgery. Otherwise, I completely agree. I would like to operate pterygium first and let the cornea stabilize and then look at the astigmatism and operate. The second point was this patient was actually not bothered about the pterygium. So we only did a cataract surgery. He just was bothered about his vision. So we actually left the pterygium in place.
And one question to Ramurthy. Would you always think of using only a Barrett formula for a small hyperopic eye, or would you try to compare 2-3 formulas and then take a call as to which one you would take?
See, now we have almost completely switched over to Barrett Universal 2, either which is incorporated in the optical biometer, or even if it's from an immersion A scan, use the online formula that is available in the websites. I know that Hoffer Q for a small eye has certain advantages, when the Holiday 2 might have certain relevance. The problem is if you get 2-3 readings, then it's difficult to decipher as to which one is the right one. If I get one saying 36, another saying 37, others saying 39, which one do I go for? But in the last couple of years, based on the theoretical basis of the Barrett, also a personal experience, I think across the board, we have started using the Barrett and its various iterations, and it works quite well for us. It's not that we never have a refractive surprise, but by and large, it works well.
Dr. Kamal, one last question to you. Dr. Kamal Kapoor, are you there? He's not there. Dr. Harbansh?
I will take all the formulas into the consideration and will take the highest reading available, the maximum power available, and target at least if the power is 35, 36 in that range, And then I will rather target around -0.5 or -1. And remember, I'll take higher than the highest value available in any of the formulas. So that even if because for two reasons, one is that most of the myopic patients will be happy. And secondly, post-operatively, you got to do the laser correction of the residual refractive error. Myopia will be easier to correct than hyperopia. So I rather prefer patients to be little myopic side.
And before we conclude, what is your thought on oval rhexis in PPC? Would you think of incorporating it in the harder cataracts or oval rhexis?
No, I got my own technique of doing hard cataract, so I don't think you really need oval rhexis for that. So, it's good enough to have 5, little on the larger size, minimum rhexis size. If the cataract is really hard, 5.5 should be there. 5.5 to 6, then whether it's oval or circular, it really makes not much of a difference. But it should
Arshul?
definitely not be short on the nasal side. Cross incisional rhexis should not be smaller. Some incisional, if it is little smaller, will do. So it is the cross incisional where you are going to do most of your maneuvers should not be small. That is the only thing.
Harshul?
Yes, ma'am. I also feel same, ma'am, as Herbert sir said. Oval rhexis, in my view, I don't think it can give any advantage over the normal rhexis. But yes, we should not aim for larger rhexis in these cases, because many times in true posterior polar cataract, capsule will open up in the end and you need to put IOL in sulcus and do good optic capture for long-term stability of the IOL. And for that, if your rhexis is large, then you can't do the optic capture.
No, oval
So it should
rhexis
not
is
be more than
large.
5.25 or 5.5.
Oval rhexis, I think, is a more personalized choice and
Yeah,
has
maybe.
been advocated by some, but not everybody does it.
Yes.
Madam, one point regarding this pterygium, it is
Yes.
important to tell the patient that this pterygium is not the thing which we are going to operate when we are going to leave it alone. Because otherwise, these people will come back and tell that you have taken out cataract, but my full cataract is not gone.
It's still there.
So this
yeah.
is still there. So it's very important to tell them that we are going to retain this.
Kedar, you could have taken out the pterygium even while you were doing, after you've done the cataract surgery, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I'm sure
Then we-
you can just do an excision.
So I do believe that if it's a fleshy pterygium, you could do it in separate sitting, but such a small pterygium of the like this, which is not impacting the astigmatism, could have been removed in the same sitting, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. We did have a word with this patient, and we did clearly explain to him, and he clearly said that I knew about the pterygium and I just want my vision back. And I've been to multiple centers and they have all told me about various risks of operating a cataract in this eye. So he was really scared. So he just wanted to see better. He wasn't concerned about the pterygium actually.
Thanks,
Very
Kedar.
valid.
That was a